Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today's question was suggested by a viewer, thanks to David Kennedy for this one. Amy wants to play a boom from Boom Bust. She wants to target her Dwarven Ruins and Nick's land, and then sacrifice her Dwarven Ruins to make 2 red mana that she can use to pay for the boom. Is this possible? If so, what will happen? Alright, so in order to answer this question, let's take a close look at how targets work when you're casting a spell. And there's actually 2 times when the target gets checked to see if it's legal, and the spell needs to see a legal target at both of those times in order for it to work. So the first of those checks is of course performed at the time when you're casting the spell. Now fortunately for Amy, the step in the process for casting a spell where you choose targets for that spell actually does happen before the part where you can activate mana abilities to make mana to pay for the spell. So that means that this first part is going to work out exactly the way that she hopes. Amy is able to target her Dwarven Ruins with the spell, and after that, when the game is letting her activate mana abilities, she can sacrifice the Dwarven Ruins, and its mana ability will be able to generate some mana, and because she has already targeted that land, that does not interfere at all with the process of targeting, so she will be able to play the boom targeting the Dwarven Ruins and also sacrifice Dwarven Ruins to make some red mana that she can use to cast that spell. Okay, so the first part of this trick worked out exactly the way Amy is hoping. However, we're not out of the woods quite yet. Remember, I said that there are 2 times when the game checks to see if the targets are legal. So what's going to happen at the second time? Well, that happens at the time when the spell is resolving. And of course, at the time when the boom resolves, it's going to see that one of the targets, that being the Dwarven Ruins, is no longer on the battlefield. Because Dwarven Ruins is no longer in the zone that it's supposed to be in, that means the game is going to consider it an illegal target. Presumably, Nick's land is still going to be on the battlefield, and there's not going to be anything wrong with it being a target, so that means that when the game performs this check, it's going to see that there's 1 legal target and 1 illegal target, and that means that it will continue to resolve and do as much as it can. Now, if all of the targets are illegal, that would mean the spell doesn't even get a chance to resolve. It just gets put into its owner's graveyard, and none of its effects happen, even effects that have absolutely nothing to do with the targets. But in this case, we have 1 legal target, and so that means the spell will go on to resolve, and it will do as much as it can. Now, when I say do as much as it can, what that means is a spell is not allowed to affect an illegal target in any way, nor is it able to instruct that illegal target to act on some other thing. But any targets that are still legal, well, the spell is going to continue resolving and affect them the way it normally would. So applying that to the scenario that we have, that would mean that Amy is going to get off scot-free and Nick is going to have his land get destroyed by the boom, because it's the only legal target left. Pretty good trick. Now, this trick will work even if the land becomes an illegal target for some other reason. We use the example of Dwarven Ruins and becoming an illegal target through leaving the battlefield. However, if Amy did something that, like, for example, gave her land Shroud, or made her land into something that was a permanent that wasn't a land, or caused it to leave the battlefield and come back, in all of those kinds of cases, Amy would still have the exact same benefit because her land would be an illegal target and therefore not able to be affected by the boom. This play came up a lot in Modern back when Boom Bust was a little bit more popular there, and it was possible to play the Boom Bust targeting your own fetch land and your opponent's land, and then sacrifice your fetch land to get another land, and the new land of course was not targeted by Boom Bust, the fetch land was, so that would mean you would get the exact same sort of situation happening. Really great trick. Okay, so now let's take a look at exactly the same thing happening, except this time Amy doesn't have a Boom Bust. She has a Political Trickery. So is that going to change the answer at all? And at first you might think, well, everything looks pretty much the exact same. And so if Amy was to target her own land and Nick's land, and then sacrifice her own land before the Political Trickery was able to resolve, well, we would be in exactly that same sort of situation, where there's 1 legal target and 1 illegal target. And so we might think that this would work out exactly the same. However, there's one very important difference. If you read Political Trickery, you'll notice that it uses the word exchange. And that's a very important word because it has an actual definition in the comprehensive rules that defines exactly what it means to exchange 2 things. Notably, you need to be able to actually exchange both of the things in order for the exchange to go through. Partial exchanges are not allowed. If you try to exchange 2 things and one of them is not able to be exchanged, then that means nothing at all will happen. A partial exchange will not be made. This kind of lines up pretty well if you think about what the English definition of the word exchange means. It kind of implies that you're giving something up and getting something else in return. This, of course, is not what's happening in the game scenario that we described, and so it kind of makes sense that there's a game rule that makes it so that this can't happen. It also is a good idea to have this rule in place because there's other types of exchanges in Magic's history that exchange things that aren't permanents, and it wouldn't really make sense if you were to, for example, have a creature that got its toughness exchanged away and it didn't get a new toughness in return, or had a player exchange their life total with something else and now they don't have a life total anymore. So that rule prevents those sorts of weird situations happening too. Make no mistake about it, the political trickery is considered to have resolved, and it'll just do as much as it can. It's just that as much as it can happens to be absolutely nothing in this specific situation. And that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling, but until then, I hope you have a great day.